Hello everyone and welcome to Boat 2026 and welcome back to Creator in Conversation. I am your host, Eoin McAuley, the founder and president of the Tala Academy of Sequential Art, that's TASQ Art, Ireland's very first academy dedicated entirely towards comic book production and a wider field of sequential art, that's images in deliberate sequence juxtaposed to convey a narrative or source of information. For the past year now, I've been running this podcast, Creator in Conversation, and technically today's episode is in fact our 50th episode. The reason we have a kind of an extra episode is because we did a bonus episode of 16.1 with Mr. Elliot S. Maggin. We've been very good at keeping to a weekly schedule of new episode every Tuesday, but in the situation with Mr. Maggin, we decided to release that one on Monday because it was coinciding with Miracle Monday, which of course is his famous 1980 novel featuring Superman, which took place in the third Monday of May. So that episode went out on a Monday and we had a follow-up episode then. It was between the two-part episode with Anthony Marquise from the Joe Kubert School. So as a result, we've kind of already done 50 interviews. We've conducted 50 interviews. This technically is shown as 50. Technically it's a 51st episode of the podcast. We will have two more that will take us up to 52, and that will conclude consecutively having a new episode each week and end year one, and we're also going to end season one at that point. For today's episode, what I wanted to do was actually just take you on a peek behind the curtain, as it was, about our first year making this podcast, talk about its origins, explain the rationale behind it, what the mission statement is, our ideas moving forward, and of course invite you all to participate in the form of feedback, which can be by emailing us directly, info@tasqart.com, that's TASQART.com, or you can comment wherever you get this podcast as well in the comment section. Leave a review, share with your friends and family. Excuse me. So for today's episode, what I wanted to do is just introduce you all to what tools do we use, software, hardware, how do we get these episodes out, advice for those of you who might be considering to set up your own podcast. And of course, by no means am I suggesting that I'm fully knowledgeable in this field. It's still very, very new to me. I'm only kissing upon about a year doing a podcast. If you want to hear a seasoned pro talk about podcast production, I invite you to listen back to episode 6 with Mr. John Suttress, the Word Balloon podcast, who has over 20 years experience doing a comic book podcast and has interviewed all the major players within the field. So today, sit back, relax and enjoy as I talk you through what we do here at Creator in Conversation and how it began. So let's start with the genesis then. Why this podcast? Why Creator in Conversation? Originally, Creator in Conversation was not conceived to be a podcast. It was actually a series of talks which we would plan to host within TASQ Art, the Academy. It was physically taking place at the Academy at the Edge in Avonmore Road. So it's based, of course, in Tala, where we get our namesake from. And our first couple of podcast episodes reflect that. We had invited Michael Carroll, Colin Griffin and Trina Farrell to come along and address basically the students. And of course, we also made this available to non-students and members to the general public. We realised that we were getting fantastic content, but the traction with the audience physically wasn't there. And to do something in person each week proved to present its own challenges. But luckily, I had the foresight to record. Going forward, the rationale for recording was so that we could have a repository for some of our members who weren't able to attend in person. And then what we had also done was we have, and particularly myself, I've been operating a room at Dublin Comic Con for the past number of years. We would host talks and workshops, and I began recording some of these talks. Originally, I had recorded them with the point of view of giving it to my friend John with Word Balloon so that he might play them on his podcast. And the idea was cross promotion. He would have the content for his podcast. We'll be able then to raise the publicity and awareness of what we were doing and the projects we wanted to put a spotlight on. But I was actually in conversation with John. He mentioned that he found the content to be quite good, and that he gave me that encouragement to consider doing a podcast. So ultimately, Creator in Conversation, it began life as a in-person discussion that took place here at TASQ in person, open to both our members and to our students and to the general public. But to try and capture as wide an audience as possible, we decided to create this podcast. Now, I am myself an avid podcast listener. There's many episodes and programs I thoroughly enjoy. I've mentioned Word Balloon as one. I sometimes dip in with the 99% Invisible podcast as well. Recently, I've picked up the Rob Liefeld show with Robservations as well. That's been interesting to hear a veteran in the industry share their experiences. And also Strange Brain Parts on YouTube, if you check that out, is a thoroughly enjoyable podcast series, which is almost like mini documentary episodes, and that's on YouTube. So check out all those podcasts as well. Of course, there's also the main media ones like Conan O'Brien Needs a Fan is one that I will listen to every week as well, thoroughly enjoyable. And I've also started picking up the DC high volume Batman series as well. And all that I've mentioned there is available entirely for free. So if you're looking for entertainment, something to pass the time on your commute, I highly recommend all of those podcasts as well. So when I made the decision to start the podcast, there was another group as well who encouraged me, and that was Podcast Dublin. So originally I was introduced to Stefano Mazzori, who is the manager at The Edge, and he's been a great source of encouragement and support to me as I was setting up the academy here at TASQ. Stefano's behind Missouri marketing, but he really wanted to get into the niche of podcasting. So he went on and evolved into what became Podcast Dublin. And he works very closely with Matt Sheedy at Media Vibe. And Matt is usually our go-to photographer, filmographer. He also edits a lot of our podcasts as well. So wherever you see some really nice edits or some good imagery or the audio sounds exceptionally clear in a particular episode, I guarantee you that was Matt, and my many, many thanks to Matt as well for all of his assistance. Because doing a weekly podcast, and we get into this in just a moment, it's a real trek. You can't just, decide an hour before release that you're going to do the podcast. You need time to record, to upload, and that's before you get into editing and processing and everything else that goes into it. So Matt was a great godsend to us in making this podcast, because he was able to go through every single episode, help to save some episodes as well, because typically when I record, it will take place in one or two ways. I either record on my phone, which is what I'm actually doing for today's episode. I'm just recording raw from my phone, or it will be through Zoom. But then we'll get into this in a moment as well. The equipment that you use, the type of microphone, makes all the difference in terms of what edits may have to or may not have to take place as well. Unfortunately, not all episodes are salvageable. I recorded many episodes at Dublin Comic Con, and you've been hearing them from the past, and those episodes are great to have because it gave me a backlog so that I was able to guarantee if I couldn't get an interview in a particular week, or if I had to make something up on short notice, I had a reservoir of interviews I could lean upon and draw upon. And that really helped me keep the weekly schedule release. But there was one which featured a Justice League reunion. We had, of course, Andrea Romano, who you heard on the podcast in the previous episode as well. And that her first conversation with us, that was in episode 9, was recorded back when I was program director for Pulse College. And then subsequently she came to the academy and delivered one of our very first masterclasses. But I was really curious what really happened, I should say, more so than curious. Curious is the polite way of putting it, but I gave my phone to a colleague to record the Justice League reunion, which Andrea was there, Susan Eisenberg, like everyone was just who could have made it was present. And all we got was like ruffling noise because I'm pretty sure my colleague kept the microphone close to his crotch or something, and we got absolutely no audio. So God bless him, Matt went in, tried to save that episode, working his magic, but unfortunately that was unsalvageable. I think I still have the footage, so who knows, maybe I'll release it as a disaster episode. But that was unfortunate, so that's the last episode that never was. That said, going into the podcast, one of the main concerns I had was, what if something happened on a technical level? So I mentioned how Creating Conversation began as a series of talks. We would bring guest speakers in physically to address the public, but also featured within the podcast is what we call masterclasses. Masterclasses we used when we started the academy. We opened our doors in February 2024. I had first viewed the offices in January 2024. By the time our season finale episode comes out, it'll be 1 year since I've actually stepped foot for the first time at the edge where we found our offices. So with the masterclasses, what that involved was we had a guest speaker. If they were in person, we typically have a mic. We either mic them up or we have a very steady mic on the desk to pick up what they have to say. But sometimes it's also delivered via Zoom. So in one instance, we had, of course, Kevin Easton, apologies, who came in episode 2, and he delivered his masterclass. And that was all done on Zoom. And what was... At the time, I was actually very calm about it because I had done so many Zoom classes during COVID and lockdowns. It was like second nature. But literally, after Kevin's masterclass, Zoom did this big update and everything changed. So the way I would have shared screen and all was changed. And again, wasn't a huge fan of this change and update, but so be it. So that was frustrating. And then in subsequent episodes, like with Maggin Fitzmartin, when we interviewed Maggin, the Wi-Fi started to drop a bit, and that was mainly because it was one of the few times we actually recorded during like working hours during the day, and it appeared that there was more strain, I think, because where we operate from is like a work centre, so there's many other businesses as well. So something happened there with the Wi-Fi, and that was also a shaky situation. And the most recent episode that you would have heard with Dave King, for some reason, this is another glitch that Zoom does. My screen on my computer, my laptop, just went blank. So what I always do as a backup is I have my laptop set up. That's the camera that records everything. So that's why I communicate with the individuals that I'm interviewing. But then I also have my PC. I join on my PC. So if anything happens, the host can shift to the PC. I can use the comment section, make sure that it doesn't drop. And then if there's a complete Wi-Fi drop, technically that shouldn't be an issue because we have 2 different Wi-Fi servers that provide the internet to this facility. But I also have my phone, which has the Zoom app, which has data on it. So I can switch that on and have that running and join in 3 different ways. So basically, if anything happens, there's a backup, a redundancy, a backup to a backup to a backup. And that might sound a little kind of crazy, but for most times if something happened, I'm sure I'd be able to contact the person, be like, sorry, tech issue, can we reschedule? But with something like the Kevin Easton masterclass, that would have had, like, we had people from all around the world zooming in. It was a big deal. So yeah, that would have been a little bit worrisome for us as well. What was interesting as well was Kevin was very confident in delivering his masterclass, but then when it came to sharing slides, he was a little like, could I share the slides so he had one less thing to focus on? I was like, absolutely no problem, because that's how I deliver my classes here at TASQ. When we do online classes, I would share from the PC. So if you go back and watch that episode, that's actually me in the background doing the slideshow. We worked out a kind of a way to signal to each other whenever you wanted to move, but it came across pretty flawless. So that is the risk. The risk is what happens if there's a Wi-Fi drop if I'm talking to someone in another country. Thankfully, the times it has happened have been very minor, and thankfully more so, there hasn't been any major issue as of yet. But we do take this in consideration when we set everything up. I'll just let you all know this now, because it may be something, those of you who want to go in, do a podcast, like, it seems very straightforward. Just turn on the laptop, turn on the phone, speak with whoever you want to speak with, record the episode. But these are the little things that catch you out. The other element as well for you to consider is also where you store and record your file. Even if we do something in person, there's no guarantee that the file won't get corrupted, as we learned with the Justice League episode. So where possible, try to have 2 recording devices going just as a backup, even if it's like a high-end microphone recording and then just your phone. You can adjust the audio quality quite easily. Well, I probably shouldn't say easily. All I'm able to do is adjust the gains, which is the volume. In terms of clarity and everything else, I have to bow to the superior knowledge of Matt in that particular field of expertise. But it's good just to have something and a backup then as well. So a backup microphone, so on and so forth. It can go a very long way. You also need to consider your recording environment. So today, this is us being recorded in the last days of 2025. I'm just in the studio alone, but acoustically, this particular room would be a little bit, unsound. We have a lot of glass windows. We have a partition door. So, you may hear possibly in the background noise and, bouncing around. The audio fidelity isn't as strong. But if I was doing an episode, I'd be definitely mic'd up. And the type of hardware that we use, if you listen to the very first episode where we do the Irish Comic Creator Spotlight, that's purely my phone. With the Michael Carroll episode, that's also my phone, but we used a mic plugged in to pick up. That came out very good quality. With Colin and Trina, that was in person using the phone as well. But in episode 2 with Kevin Eastman, and also with episode 6 with John Sutchers, that's when we began to really solidify the idea of the podcast and record it on Zoom. Now, what I like to use is a headset called Skullcandy, but the type I was using discontinued. So I ended up using a Sony mic, and I always use one with a wire because a wire will always get you a better signal, in my opinion, when you're communicating through any device. If you have like a hard wire rather than wireless, it will go a long, long way. So what we noticed then after John's episode was maybe the audio quality could be finessed a little bit. So what we did then was in episode 7, we had an episode with the students at TASQ reading their short stories, which is printed in TASQ Tales, the prose anthology, available to buy now at lightandstrikecomics.com. And then episode 8, where I give my kind of insight into what sequential art is, my approach to teaching and storytelling and narrative in business. That was in person, but again, I was mic'd up. Episode 9, 10, 11, they were all episodes with previously recorded. So we actually just reused the audio and touched that up a little bit. But by episode 12 with David Leach, this was when we began using a different type of microphone plug-in, and the first microphone that we used was something called Shure, Shure. It's an excellent microphone. I highly recommend that if anyone's seriously considering doing a podcast, seek out the Shure microphone. The reason it's so good is that you literally just have a USB, you plug it in, and it connects. And I have some back and forth sometimes with my PCs and laptops, just because there's so much software and everything else on it that may take a time for a new add-on to upload. But honestly, this worked smooth as butter. And it also has a special kind of modulation within it that it would automatically pick up if I was to raise the tone of my voice, laugh, or do anything like whatever it was I was messing around with. If you were singing even, it would pretty much level everything out so it doesn't kind of spike. It was a really, really good microphone, and that was courtesy of Dublin Podcast. Stefano lent that to me for a good bulk, probably the first 25 or so episodes of Creating Conversation. It was excellent. And then we had to give that one back eventually because, again, we did not own that microphone. But Stefano, being an absolute gent, gave us the Blue Yeti microphone, which allows you to adjust for if you're just speaking to someone on the computer, or if there's 2 speakers either side, or if you have like a round table, it has that function. In my opinion, the Blue Yeti mic has been a little bit more tinny. Even when I go in to edit some of the videos and audio as well, I notice sometimes audio fidelity can be a little tricky. Recently, when we had Sean on talking about decaf, Sean O'Reilly, his microphone, we noticed afterwards, was quite low, so I raised the gains, but as a result I was like booming. across in that particular episode. So my apologies on to that particular one. And then, as I was mentioning before, in some instances, it just depends really on Matt's availability and Stefano as well. Like, they are extremely busy with Podcast Dublin. And I really have to recommend, if you're considering setting up a podcast, do reach out to Podcast Dublin, seek them out online. They're very available. If you need any editing work done, speak to Matt at Media Vibe. They've set up a brilliant studio, and they also have a video component now as well. So where we have the Academy at the edge off the Avonmore Road in Tallaght, there's a room called Black Box where we do some of our master classes, our graduation ceremonies, etc. But what's brilliant as well is they've set it up so that it's like a mobile studio. You have to go in to experience it. But if you look at Podcast Dublin, you'll see the facilities. It's amazing stuff. Highly recommend it. And it does make all the difference having a professional assist you in the early days of setting up a podcast. For me, it was very important that this podcast had a professional sheen to it, because I wanted it to exist to promote the Academy. Everything that we do is in service of promotion of the Academy. The Academy, Tallaght Academy of Sequential Art, TASQ Art, that is at the heart of everything that we do. It's the first of its kind in the country. Yes, there are other third level institutions that exist that do animation and games and narrative and literature and film studies and storyboarding, etc. But pure comics, it's something which, for our country, we have so many professionals working across the Atlantic for big American companies and next door to the UK and across Europe as well. But there's no really training or support solely dedicated. And I've had experiences in my career where people are even talking about like diminishing or reducing the element of sequential art. So for me, it was really, really important that this academy existed. It's the type of academy I wish existed when I was a kid, considering what my next move was. And not just as a kid as well. We very much are open up to mature students as well who are seeking to return. We've had a number in recent years also participate in classes and even join as students as well, just to reignite their passion and to help course correct their career or earlier career choices as well. So it's to try and get basically to legitimize us. In the early days, when you looked up TASQ Art, I said I was setting up an academy. People kind of went, pshaw, not really pshaw, no one talks like that anymore. But in general, people would pretty much be like, well, this isn't going to last, a weekend. So what I wanted to do was to get other creators to provide their insights, share their projects, but act as a platform for them to promote themselves as well, introduce them to Irish audiences as well, and help them to maybe connect with groups they may not usually have the opportunity to, because there's no shortage of comic book podcasts, absolutely, but I'm sure it's probably more of a rarity as you step out from the US central point. But the main thing as well was that this helped then to spread the word. More people became aware of, what's TASQ Art, what's this, what's that. And what we began to do was we had special events and master classes, of course. Perhaps the biggest one we had after Kevin Eastman was, of course, Frank Miller. And we opened that up to members of the public to attend. In between, we also had the Joe Kubert School visit as well, which we did in coordination with Dublin Comic Con. So that's been a great opportunity then for us to connect, and they were able to promote and we were able to share, and it just made more people aware of us. So at the heart, the main reason this podcast exists is to promote the Academy. It originally began as a speaker series, like a lecture series. Then we evolved it into the podcast. Originally, the records were kept for our members, but by sharing with the general public, we helped to really, develop and grow the brand, as it were. And it has really helped us get across internationally. Of course, the numbers aren't huge, but what we have is what I believe is best referred to as organic reach, which is we've never really paid to promote really the Academy. In the early days, I think I paid for 1 or 2 ads, and all we really got from that was bots, frankly. We just put out ads on social media and all you would get would be like bots interacting with it. So we try for organic reach, and it's been painfully slow. But this is why the podcast has been great, is because it gave us a frequency of like once a week, Tuesday, you are guaranteed to have your episode wherever you got your podcasts. The only time there were ever issues with podcast uploads were from the upload providers. Audible has had a number of issues in the past. Apple Podcasts has been pretty good for the most part, and Spotify has been pretty good for the most part as well. And YouTube hasn't really been an issue at all. It will usually just upload onto the point. And I'll talk about distribution and such in just a moment as well. But really, with regards to the podcast, it really helped us to break up our weeks. We do, of course, weekly comic strips as well. So every Thursday, you had promotion for the strips. Every Tuesday, promotion for the podcast, and then anything else that we had to promote in between. It was a great way to break up the week, as it were, and it was a great way for us to promote the academy, and it had a really significant knock-on effect in a positive way for our social media stats, because it meant we were now posting at least twice a week, and we were really getting good traction and building that organic reach. So I knew that the people who are following us, and I would usually go in and check as well for bots, but it was all organic reach as well, people who are genuinely interested in us. So although the numbers may be lean, at least we have a good idea of who's actually genuinely interested in what we're doing. The next big challenge is conversion. Can I get you, the listener, to consider to buy a comic, be it a digital or physical one, for €5 to €2.50? Could I consider you to sign up and to do a masterclass with us, or a short course with us? And that's something that we took in consideration when we had Dave Gibbons, which was fantastic. Just a month ago, Mr. Gibbons, I approached him to come on to speak with the students, and absolutely said, could I record it for the podcast? He had no problem, and we put that out. Typically, I would make more of a deal out of it. I would probably do it as a masterclass and invite people in. But in this case, I wanted to be solely for the members, just to give a hint to people, hey, this is what's going on behind our doors, and you could participate too. So the idea of the podcast is, if people are listening, may they too also consider participating or sitting into the audience. Because as you may have heard in some of our episodes, we let students and members or people who participate in that particular recording to ask questions, which was amazing for both the Kevin Eastman and Frank Miller episodes. With regards to Kevin Eastman, his episodes is a little over an hour, but he stayed much, much later and took a lot of questions. With Frank Miller, we were back and forth on whether we should release the Q&A. That was just purely my thoughts, because when we record something, here we're based in Europe, so you have the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. So whenever we record something, as a abundance of precaution, particularly if it's visual or video, you really need to seek the permission of everyone involved. And, where you can kind of reduce the paperwork in production, that's very, very much appreciated. But we sought out everyone's permission, released it. There was no problems on that front. But the other idea is, if I can record an episode for the podcast, I would record the main conversation, but for the most part, the Q&A and such, I may reserve for closed membership as well. Or if I don't promote the event in advance, I may release the Q&A. And really, it's just me saying, hey folks, this is what you're missing out on. And with regards to the Academy membership, no matter where you are located in the world, we can arrange schedules and online delivery to suit your needs. So if you are considering becoming a member, or you would like to study with us, or you would like assistance in your projects, do reach out. Let's have a conversation. Typically, I invite you to a Zoom call. We discuss what your hopes and ambitions are for your projects, and I make recommendations. But we've had people from many different time zones all around the globe come in and participate, particularly with Kevin Eastman. We had people like getting up at the early hours in the morning in Australia, like basically the dead of night, to join in. We had people in Asia coming in all at the same time. So it is possible, but of course we wouldn't expect everyone to do that all the time. If we have a shift in demand in a particular part of the world, we're more than happy to make those necessary concessions and accommodations to facilitate wherever the audience or wherever the membership base may be. So that's just something to consider, and that's part of the reason as well why we do this with the podcast and get it out. So a little bit about the hardware. I mainly, when we set up, as I was mentioned, I record everything via Zoom. I have a professional Zoom account and pay for the cloud recording, so that as soon as it's done, it's processed and then it can download. It is always a little bit worrying when you have that moment in between waiting for the cloud recording to process, and if it comes through okay, that's always been a fear. What happens if I do an episode and then it disappears. But you can also have a backup recording to a hard device as well, if possible. And then also, with regards to the microphones, we're using Blue Yeti at the moment, but where possible, I recommend everyone to secure themselves a Shure SHURE microphone. Also, sometimes these microphones will come, but they'll also require an extra stand, so that's something to consider. I'm probably going to upgrade back to a Shure microphone the first opportunity I can get. When recording, you have a lot of files, so the main thing is what do you do with the files. Have some way to store both online on a cloud. Google Drive is fantastic, but you have only about 15 gigabytes on a Google Drive, so you need to invest in a hard drive or memory stick or both to back up your files as well, and do make those backups. We basically have the podcast backed up across YouTube, and where the audio episodes are released is called Hubhopper, HUBHOPPER. This is Hubhopper Studio. It was something introduced to me by Stefano at Podcast Dublin, and essentially I upload my audio file there, and everything then they release it through all their channels. It's not a comprehensive release, like we don't get to our channels, but we do have the facility to release across our channels. That's a come, I would say, at the end of the episodes. If there's a particular preference you have for downloading or listening to your podcast and we're not on it, let us know. But really, we are on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcast. So we basically cover the main quadrants of where people do go to listen. Hubhopper is a very useful tool from my point of view, because it lets me know how many people are listening to us over what period of time. I can have it from all time or for most recent as well. So like just looking at the episodes here, looking at the last 30 days, I can listen to I can look at locations, for example. And what's really fascinating is that according to the analytics, our top 3 listeners are United States, Japan, and then Ireland. And then after that is the United Kingdom. What's curious is United States makes up 35.6%, whereas Japan makes up 33.3%, Ireland's 27.2%, so that's the percentages. But then a massive drop when we go to the United Kingdom of 2.2%. So it's curious how the algorithms may pick up and then suddenly you have huge listenership in a different country. Obviously, a lot of our guest speakers this past year have been based in the US, but it is very, very curious just to see how that is happening. Now, that's just within the last 30 days, the last month. If I was to look at all time, of course, there'd be a massive shift. But again, looking at it here, with the big shift, really we have the United States. There's a big drop, but it's come back up. Then Ireland, then the UK kind of just cusps just a little bit above Japan. So that's really interesting. So Japan, even if we look at all time, is still very much sitting within the top 5. So the countries that listen to the podcast, we have the United States, Ireland, the United Kingdom, Japan, Netherlands, Canada, Germany, Sweden, Australia, Singapore, Brazil, France, Mexico, Spain, Italy, Denmark, Poland, Austria, Bangladesh, Belgium, Malta, Belize, Chile, Costa Rica, Croatia, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Russia, Turkey, and after that then it's getting very low. So like some people might listen, but just be like on one occasions. So it's been interesting to see that we do seem to find that organic reach again. People are finding it organically. That could be people who are essentially just traveling and listen to the podcast. That's one element to it. Others could be due to a particular guest speaker, may have family, friends, or colleagues there. But the organic reach is welcome. The important thing in the podcast, though, is okay, you've secured a listener, but can they stay? Will they come back? Do you have return listeners as well? For that type of stuff, I look towards my YouTube channel. Now, what I decided to do with the podcast was Hubhopper permits me to upload to YouTube as well, but I keep the YouTube channel separate. That's another redundancy. If anything was to ever happen to Hubhopper, the access of the audio podcast, I would have access to the YouTube page and vice versa. So we store everything on a cloud, we make physical copies, and then we have it backed up on our 2 channels as well. But looking here at our statistics in the YouTube studio, 73.7% of our listeners have been new viewers, 14.6% have been casual viewers, and then our regular viewers are 11.7%. So what this means is that a lot of people passing by the podcast will listen, but only 11.7% are actually people who return. So our return listenership is quite low, and that reflects basically the numbers that we get for every episode. Typically on average in terms of listenership, we're looking at about 30 to 40 people listening for each new episode, and then you would have certain spikes. Sometimes it will jump up into the hundreds, and sometimes you get a big name like Frank Miller and that pops us up. We're kissing about nearly 1,300 now at this stage, but still just sitting at the 1,200, high 1,200 range as of recording. Now, what's really interesting is we've had so many big names on the podcast. Like one of our first guests was Todd Stashwick, and again, Todd's been great in terms of social media reach. And even when we had Kevin's episode, they reshared a video as well that got 19,000 views on Instagram alone. But the problem you have is about conversion. So it's not just about who you have, it's about how you present the work and get it out there. So with Instagram, shares and likes on Instagram, fantastic, but it's very difficult to get people to click off Instagram because you can't really share links and stuff. So that's always been very annoying and difficult. So we rely mainly on links and bios and links and stories. Then with Facebook, they have a whole rigmarole of when you share with a link, it kind of gets hidden. You can put the link in the comments, but that just makes things more messy. I haven't seen any real change in difference between posting the link in the comment or posting it in the main body, if I'm being honest with you. And then X has been a desolate wasteland for me in recent months. And, it's a real shame because in the early days, some of the guests you heard, particularly from the Dublin Comic Con events, our initial contact was made via X, but it seems the change in ownership has, from my point of view, and I'm speaking purely just as a user of X, it's getting more and more, paid to play on the platform, and as a result, you're not getting much in the way of organic reach. And again, the organic reach is something that's really important for the podcast. It's letting me know that the people who are listening to us are genuinely interested, so they want to listen. They're here because they're the type of audience that we want, because if they're interested, we might be able to convert them into a possible customer. Or if they don't become a member or buy anything from us, they may help us to grow our reach on the podcast. And when we hit a certain threshold, that could be monetized as well. So everything is all connected in that regard. But it's just something that's going to take a lot of time. And as I was saying, we've been doing this for about a year. But what is curious is, excuse me, particularly with Frank Miller, when he came onto the podcast, we got some good views, but it took slow and steady to try and get to it. He went on about like a month after appearing on our podcast and another podcast, and skyrocketed, tens of thousands, huge difference. Speaking with friends and colleagues, some people are saying, well, maybe I should do more video-based content. Now that's a really interesting point and something that I'm weighing up and considering. There are certain pros and cons to doing it. The pro is the video content will benefit the platform like YouTube more, and to be honest, our reach on YouTube has been stronger than the audio reach that we get from the pure audio podcast. But our most listened to video as well have been audio. Like they listen quite well. People count and say, well, if you had the visuals, that might even boost it more. Possibly, let's revisit and see. But typically when we have when we look at the Kevin Easton episode masterclass, which is all visuals and Kevin talking and sharing some of the behind the scenes and original artwork, the genesis of Totals, that still hasn't broken 300 views, So maybe it's something to do with people having to go back and find these episodes. Maybe we have to reshare old episodes as well, which is a reason why we're going to take a season break as well and mix things up a bit with the podcast. The reason being that we need time to build everything up and also promote what we have, and maybe people who have just discovered us, this could be your first episode, for example, listening to us. We have to go back and figure out, well, what can we do to help the audience, discover the other content that we have. So there's a lot there to consider to do. And with regards to the visuals, the other element as well is, although we've had guests come on, they try to share visuals. A lot of our guests, sometimes they're calling us through their phones, sometimes they're more tech savvy than others, sometimes they're holding something up to a camera and you just don't get a clear read. And then that involves more editing and time, and that can push a deadline. And there is a cost factor with the podcast. Although you get this podcast for free, in terms of the listing the services of Mediafy, podcast doubling, hosting, editing software that's being used, even the equipment, all of that comes with a cost. So the podcast has actually made a loss of thousands for us at this stage. Not high thousands, but like a couple of grand has definitely gone into the podcast itself. And that's just purely to do with the actual setting up and refinement of it. And some of you might raise your eyebrows going, oh, well, I already am involved in a podcast and I don't pay a penny. You might be like, oh, well, I know it can be done for less. And that's true. But what we're trying to do is build an infrastructure here, and we're trying to create a particular tone and a way to how we want to present, and basically professionalism across, so that people can, listen and it be indistinguishable to any high-end production as well, because the technology is there for it, but how we present that and get it out there, that's on me to try and refine. And I've had to upskill myself significantly. So I do have a background in media and film, but like first time I was making stuff in film, I was using actual tape, so it took me a minute or two to revise and to kind of get back into the swing of things working digitally. Now, just before I had set up TASQ, I was involved in an animated short project I arranged with the students at Pulse College when I was a program director there in the BA in animation, and I was introduced by a colleague of mine to Shotcut, SHOTCUT. That's a free to use and download video editing software. So whenever I'm editing the podcast via audio, you can export as an MP3 file, or you can export as a HD video file as well. That's all been edited on Shotcut. And that's free to use. That's great. But then when it comes towards, let's say, video graphics, if you see any type of like titles coming in, motion images, anything like that, that's all been done in a app called Canva, Canva. Canva is very useful. It gives you a lot of resources where you can pick and choose what you want to add in, and you have the license to use it. But a word of caution, anything that you create that isn't wholly yours, that is, you haven't made the design elements entirely yourself, you don't retain the copyright to. And there are certain AI functions as well that you want to be very cautious of using as well, so that if you don't want to use generative AI, be careful in what you're using onto it. We just use it for the basics of just I upload pictures, remove background, reformat elements, and then maybe use some basic fading and editing effects. But so far so good. I've been able to set up a template then, so we're able to run everything through that. And we made a decision to use more visual based content in the videos. We for the longest of times, up to about episode 37, everything was pretty much just a single thumbnail, and that's in 1400 by 1400 resolution, and that thumbnail is what we have to upload on Hubhopper so that the the episode file will appear for everyone who goes looking for an Apple Podcast or Spotify. And I used to just upload that image to YouTube, but I'm just looking at it here. It's actually from episode 25. So for the first 50% of episodes, you would have just seen a JPEG basically on a YouTube video, not very inviting. So we reformatted that. So Maggin would have been the first of the episodes. We started using these animated features. Then this was followed by the teaser to the Steve Ditko trailer for the 3-part docu-series that we did. And then subsequently then we kept everything pretty much to the video graphics, where we changed the main picture and the name of the guest speaker. With regards to the thumbnails, we've settled now on a thumbnail format up until about, again, episode 26, 27. We didn't really do thumbnails, introduced as part of the Ditko series, went back to just having JPEG, but it left a lot of negative space. So following the Frank Miller Masterclass, we kind of settled upon that one. Tom Pyre would have been the last one in episode 37 that we used the old format, and then we went with thumbnails. Again, thumbnails are important. It's the preview image that you see when you go on to YouTube, and that kind of invites the audience if they want to actually click onto it. So you want to make that as inviting as possible. Of course, we've had so many brilliant names and guest speakers on the podcast. We've been truly blessed with the people that we've had come decide to speak with us. But just because they're known in comic book circles doesn't mean that they're known in general circles. So that's something as well that I would have to consider moving forward, is the general audience appeal as well, and what would invite someone to sit down and actually click on that particular episode. So pretty much to recap the production cycle, the way everything will go is I would record primarily on my laptop, my PC and backup my phone on standby. Typically everything goes A-OK. If there's any issue, I always have a backup screen and a backup internet provider. Everything's recorded via Zoom. I pay for Zoom, so that's another cost to the podcast. And the Zoom records to the cloud. Once it's processed, I can download the audio file. I upload that to a shared folder with Matt at Mediafire via Google Drive. Matt then edits that audio, and then typically I will go to Matt then and we will record in the studio at Podcast Dublin here at the Edge, the intro and the outro. So that's recorded separately on a different microphone, a different setup. Once that's done, it's all exported. I get the audio file. I then do the blue thumbnail that you see pretty much wherever you download your episode, and then upload it via Hubhopper. That's all the audio. Then I go in, change the graphics and add the audio over that video graphic on a loop, export that as an MP4 video and upload it to YouTube. Hubhopper, everything's scheduled to 6 a.m. GMT on a Tuesday, and then it's also done the same on YouTube as well, where it's uploaded. But then usually I set it as a premiere, so if you go into our channel you can kind of see in advance a sneak peek at, oh, what's the next episode, what's coming up. So the main advice I would give everyone is to invest in some type of storage facility for your files. Have a system in place in how you label and share those files. Invest in a very good microphone. I recommend either the Shure microphone, SHURE, or invest in the Blue Yeti mic as well. They're both brilliant, easy to plug in, very adaptable to all devices, and you can adjust the gains. If you want video editing software, Shotcut is free to use, and that would permit you to adjust the gains, the audio volume again onto it, and add in and cut up and splice up what you want. If you want to cut something out or add something in, you can do that. There's many tutorials on YouTube as well to show you how to use Shotcut, very user friendly. And then if you're looking for something to make your logos and, import and export your files, I recommend Canva. Now, there's a free-to-use version of Canva, but if you want the full benefit and to be able to use the assets for production, I recommend paying for the professional license in Canva as well. Now, just along with the microphone, the Canva license, and other expenses, you'll be spending some money. If you decide that you're just going to record everything just off your phone and start small, by all means, go ahead. I'm not encouraging anyone to spend money, and I always recommend in marketing, you should always use the, whatever is the cheapest. And that doesn't mean that you're cutting corners. You still have to make sure the quality is good. So whatever you need to get the quality there, do your best with what you have and build the organic growth as well. Really for me, the podcast is just to be able to have my body of work in a concentrated area, so I can go back and say, here's all my conversations. When I'm giving a lecture, if we talk about something in a class, I can direct the students saying, hey, this reminds me of this conversation, go listen here, or this person I remember that told me about this scenario. So it is worthwhile to look at. And again, The video versus audio is something I revisit, but looking here, some of the most visual elements that we have, such as the Kevin Eastman masterclass, such as the Anthony Marquez and Emma Cuba live podcast, they were all videos, and they're not really moving the needle. The most highest volume of viewers have been mainly audio based. In terms of our output, so what we've done with the podcast is new episode every Tuesday. In episode 16.1, the bonus episode, that came out on a Monday with Mr. Elliot S. Maggin. I really, really wanted to have that conversation with Elliot. That was probably, it was a bucket list item conversation for me to have. Delighted that we're able to do it. And that kind of gave us up to the 50 interviews and conversations. So at this point of recording, we've had 50 conversations recorded. So this is kind of like our retrospective before we go in for penultimate and final episode of season 1. Apart from that, we did a couple of trailers. One is just a trailer for Creator and Conversation itself. Another was a trailer for TASQ, which is our channel advert now. If you haven't subscribed, you go to the channel, you'll see the channel video play. And then there was, of course, the trailer for the Steve Ditko mini-series, which, is among our highest viewed videos as well. That's kissing about 200 views at the moment. But furthermore, what we have is we did a 3-part series in Steve Ditko. That was very well received, and it really boosted the numbers for us onto the podcast as well. It could be because we had so many guest speakers sharing, a shared audience coming back. Now, there was a drop-off as we went along, but it did also spike towards the end as well. So it's something which I might consider as a format going forward. So I'm not adverse to doing mini-series, and I might even roll out a mini-series in between seasons, something that I can do and prep myself in the background as we prepare for other episodes. What's been great and really helped this particular season of the podcast has been Dublin Comic Con. If it wasn't for Dublin Comic Con, I wouldn't have had half the content because we record so much live at the show, and that's a great way to allow audiences to participate in as well. So typically that's pretty much how we operate. New episode every Tuesday, usually a standalone conversation. We had some variances on that, like Anthony and Emma were both 2-part episodes. Elliot was a bonus episode, and the Steve Ditko miniseries was a team in 3 parts then as well. And that really helped me. The Ditko episode is really what pushed me towards the videographic element into it as well, working with Canva and working on the thumbnails. So basically, I'm learning as I go with this as well. I'm learning on skills that I haven't used in quite a while, and it's been great. And so I thoroughly enjoy it, and I hope that comes across in the episodes as you listen to them. Okay, so just to wrap up, let me just give you a couple of behind-the-scenes statistics here then. So what has been our top 10 episodes? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what the top 10 episodes have been of Creator and Conversation as according to our YouTube audience, which as of recording is perhaps our biggest audience for this podcast. At no surprise, we have Mr. Frank Miller coming in at just a very high 1,200 views, and probably will get to about 1,300 in the early 2026. That's followed by Dr. Zach Cruzy for the Steve Ditko Part 1. That's 224. That's followed by Kevin Eastman at 204. And that's followed by our very first episode, the Irish Comic Creator Spotlight, 147, followed by the third part of the Steve Ditko series with his nephew, Mark Zen Ditko, followed by the second part of the Ditko series with Jack C. Harris. Then we have the Students of TASQ with Samantha Brooks coming in, and then that's followed by David Barry, who spoke about his father, Cy Barry, and that's a project as well. I promise David, who's listening, that we'll get back to in the new year. And then, of course, the episode I was very excited to do with Mr. Elliot S. Maggin as well. So that brings us to 9, and then the 10th then is, of course, Mr. Paul Levitz, who I was so delighted to have the opportunity to speak with Mr. Levitz. It was really insightful, thoroughly enjoyable. It was a contact I had made with Mr. Levitz before lockdown, and then lockdown changed the world as we knew it, and we followed back up, and that was great. So really enjoyed that conversation. Now, what's curious is some that isn't our top 10 videos but episodes, and that's particularly for creating conversation. Technically, Todd Stashwick would come in and knock Mr. Levitz out, and he would come in as our fourth highest. But you see, with Todd, we had uploaded, our YouTube channel existed before the podcast, so we released Mr. Stashwick's masterclass. So originally it was released as a masterclass first and then re-released as a podcast episode. So if we count the first release, then that does make the top 10. And it was great because when I reached out to Todd to see if we could re-release his episode, he was filming the new Vision Quest, over in the UK. And he was like, I'm actually going to pop over to Ireland for a quick holiday. And we got a chance to catch up. So myself and Matt caught up with Todd, took him to the Book of Kells, took him to the Bog Body exhibit, and just had a pleasant afternoon around Dublin City. So it was great. Todd's a gent, and I look forward to catching his performance in Vision Quest. And that was, again, a great experience. If I hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have met these people along the way. In terms of our top 10 videos, everything remains the same except that the Steve Ditko video makes it in so that's just the trailer for the 3-part series. And then, of course, Andrea Romano, a quick short about less than 90 seconds, which talks about casting Kevin Conroy as Batman, came in. That makes it into the top 10 as well, knocking out Samantha, David, and Elliot, if we count as the top 10 videos that we listen to. Before we go into the audio element, I just wanted to just talk you guys through some of the episodes. We did variations on themes. Like, typically creating conversation is me speaking with a comic book creator, but also along the way we did some changes. Like, we would have people in the wider sequential art field, so like my friend John O'Brien, who worked in Baldur's Gate, discussed the video game element. Then we also had Andrea Romano, of course, speak about voice direction and animation, of course. And then we also had the Remembering Kevin Conroy episode, which I was so happy I was able to do. And it was actually quite very well received as well among audiences, because if you listen to the episode, Kevin was a real gentleman, very professional, offered me a lot of help as well before his passing on a particular project. And I was, without a doubt, one of the last emails I had from Kevin was that, would my students be interested if he used to teach a class while he was over in Ireland? He had planned to come back to Ireland. And I was like, absolutely. And this is before I set up the academy. But without doubt, if he was still with us today, he would have definitely been a masterclass here at TASQ Art. So I was so happy to pay homage to his memory. And then, as well as you mentioned, we had sometimes the mini series or live demos and masterclasses. Episode 8 was an interesting episode for myself, because it was literally me as the guest, but it was me just giving my whole spiel about what I think sequential art is, how you could use it for marketing, advertising, business. And we also had really interesting guest speakers, like family members speaking about the legacies of the families, with David Barry, Elliot Maggin talking about his distinguished career writing comics and that transition to other media and novels as well. Vincent Sozzolo speaking about original art in his auction house as well. And then there's absolute legends like Dave Gibbons, and Frank Miller coming along. So it's been a real privilege. And of course, we've also had some of the guest lecturers of TASQ Art come along, and Tom Constantino as well come in and speak to us a little bit about the transferable skills as the producer on the Orville, and of course season 2 of TED coming up as well. It was great to hear. And my hope is that anyone listening to this would like, oh well, why should I study sequential art, or what type of career could I or my my loved one who wants to explore this career avenue, what can they expect? Hopefully this is giving you an insight into that as well. So that's pretty much where we are now in terms of the video content. Slight difference when we come into the episodes of the audio, because looking at it here, our top episodes vary onto it. Now again, remaining at the top is still going to be Mr. Frank Miller, but as of yet, he's not yet broken 300 episodes. He's just 300 listeners. He's 282. But what's also really interesting is people who have lower viewership on YouTube would have higher listenership on podcasts. Like Rafa Labasco, for example, is almost tripling his numbers in terms of the audio side of things as well. And then also the Ditko episodes come across quite well still. And I was saying this for the longest time. Mr. David Leach, who was one of our first speakers in the early days, he's sitting quite high in the audio. He's a return speaker, but he's also one who definitely set our stats on fire a bit. 143 listeners from his first conversation. People really enjoyed that talk with David, and it was actually one of the few occasions where people actually took time out and wrote into us and said, hey, this is a really good episode. I totally enjoyed this. So I remember saying it to David, because David was worried he might have gotten a bit off track or overexcited. And I was like, no, David, this is great. This is what people really, really wanted to hear. And we've been very fortunate that we've had editors come along and speak on the podcast as well, because that kind of pulls back another veil as well that people and creators have about what do editors expect, because they often have the hiring and the firing power, as it were, within the industry. So overall, it's been a totally enjoyable experience. Some common questions that you might have is like, well, how do I arrange for all these guest speakers? There's literally nothing to it. Everyone would have some form of representation or contact online. You just have to go through the proper channels, have a lot of patience. We waited till we had a handful of episodes and stuff recorded before we went ahead, and we also had to anticipate what happens if something went awry or we missed something. As I mentioned before, I went to Malta Comic Con, brilliant time, brilliant show. It was not conducive to record in the environment we were in. Brilliant show, don't get me wrong. But just for the microphone, it'd be too much ambient noise. So we arranged for, let's say, Dave and John then, who I met there, to come back and do it on Zoom. So sometimes you plan, but then you also have to have, as I was saying, the backup. But I'm very proud to have delivered the weekly podcast. That was a challenge that we set for ourselves, but I believe the consistency has been very important for us as well. And we didn't exhaust all of our contacts. We still have people to reach out to for season 2 and 3, but I doubt we'll go for another year-long stretch. We might break it up with other smaller podcast episodes, and projects as well will be our way. We might just break it up. Some people did say no to us, of course. I shoot for the moon. Like Tom Cruise was a no. And you might be thinking, why was I wanted to speak with Tom Cruise? I'm like, why not? But I reached out to his people and I did get a response, so that's been great. Alan Moore as well was a decline, just wasn't available. So I know some people were thinking after Frank Miller, after Dave Gibbons, would Alan Moore be another one? And we did consider it, but his people were like, he is unavailable. So I'm sorry, folks. All I can do is ask. And then we also had other people who we hosted events with and talks, like Brittany Hosier, who is the editor for Action Comics at the moment. And she did a great talk when the Joe Kubert School came over as well. But you see, with Warner Brothers and DC, there are certain permissions you have to seek. So we were able to secure portfolio reviews for the students at TASQ Art and at Dublin Comic Con. So we had the portfolio reviews locked in, but then there was also a panel discussion, which we hosted off Dublin Comic Con as part of a masterclass series, but we weren't permitted to record that. So sometimes you might think, oh, well, why should I become a member of TASQ Art? And, why should I be interested? If I just wait long enough, we release it as a podcast on a YouTube or whatever. That's not a guarantee. I cannot guarantee that everything that we do will be recorded and released. Absolutely not. There's no guarantee of that. It really only will happen if there's an audience there. And truly, it's been curious, because sometimes we put something out, we gain traction over time. But I cannot stress enough that the the future for the podcast and even for the academy can be quite precarious, because we only get by the people who become members, or if we grow our audience and become self-sustaining. So any likes, any shares, any comments, anything at all to help generate traction for us, just to get word out, even if we're not your specific cup of tea. If you know someone who might be interested, or even if you just share this, it goes a very long way to helping us, keep the lights on, as it were. There's a possibility that the whole podcast may not come back for season 2. Don't mean to end on a dead note, but I think we've fired on all bats in this particular season. If I was never do another episode, I think we leave a brilliant body of work behind. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of a time factor and a cost factor that comes in. And I prefer to maintain the quality that we've created now and maybe grow what we have and use it as a repository. And if it does come back, we may have reduced episodes or change formats slightly as well. We'll take the video aspect in consideration, but there's other factors that need to be considered, like cost, time, production, etc. So I prefer to make sure that our guests are comfortable and that we present everyone in the best possible light as well as we produce it. I do like the audio platform more as my own personal preference when interviewing people. It's like a nice conversation. I listen primarily to my podcast while I'm on the go. And that's something as well that I can reveal to you guys. So I've spoken to you about, episode performances, locations, in terms of unique listeners overall as of, the 30th of the December 2025, before we head into the new year. We've had about over 601 listeners. But in terms of devices that we have people listening to, the Apple iPhone is the most popular, followed by Windows computer, followed by Android phone, Apple computer, iPad, other computers, and then a Google Chromebook. But 65.8% of our audience listen to us on mobile, compared to 34.3%. And if we're on mobile, that usually suggests that the audience is more mobile, like listening to us on the go. In terms of the operating systems, and this is all thanks to Hubhopper, I can see this data. iOS is our main operating system that people listen to us on, followed by Windows, Android, Macs, then Linux, Chrome, KOS, and Ubuntu, which is a new one to me. In terms of the platforms, it's been really interesting. Spotify seems to be among our most popular, followed by Hubhopper, which is our host website. If you go to our homepage, taskart.com, that's where you hear the podcast itself, followed by Audible, Apple Podcast, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Podbean, AntennaPod, and something called Fountain, which is new. But what's interesting is between Podcast Addict and Castbox, there is an unknown platform, which I don't know. And it's given us a good spike there on like December the 22nd. It looks like we had a nice spike on it, like about 53 listeners onto it. And I don't know what that platform is. So that's been interesting. Something that needs to be tracked further from our point of view. But it's good to know that I can see where the listeners are coming from, and then these stats take about 48 hours to upload if it's coming from Spotify as well in particular. But Hubhopper is a good platform I recommend to you guys, and if you need help and guidance, like I do recommend, if you're considering doing podcasts, there's a lot you can find on YouTube in terms of tutorials, but I recommend reaching out to Podcast Dublin, even just for an initial recording or consultation, see what they can do. They're very amenable, very approachable. If you're transparent with them and share exactly what you can afford and what you can do, I'm sure they'll be able to assist you as well. They've been a great asset to me, and I see of no reason why, if you're going to do this, why not take that professional step and guidance at the beginning. And I don't just mean this for Irish listeners as well. The guys are more than willing and able to and fully equipped to do business internationally. You can send your files in, as I do, have them edit in their suite via share drive, and they can meet you via Zoom or whatever else, any video call to have meetings and discuss as well. So that's pretty much where we are now with this podcast. I just want to again thank everyone for taking the time out to listen to follow us for this past year. It means a lot that when I put an episode out that there actually is someone who we don't know, like in Japan it seems. We have some really good listeners. Really appreciate you all listening in. We're still very, very small when we're looking at everything here. Like overall on our YouTube page, we've only got 9.6 thousand views, only 606.4 hours of watch time, and only 112 subscribers. So we're very, very small, but we consistently put out, and I'm pretty sure consistency is going to be the key to this game. But anything that you can do to help share is always very much appreciated. And look, I listen, as I said at the start of this episode, to a lot of podcasts myself. I'll be honest, I'm not necessarily subscribed to everything I like and share everything myself. So I know I'm pot meat kettle, but I do hope everyone listening has been enjoying what we're doing. I hope it's kind of, sparked a light in some of you. And if you have any stories, points you wish to share, advice, comments, or otherwise, do get in touch. Send us a comment, DM us on social media. All of our social media handles are the same. It's at TASQart, TASQART. You can email us at info@tasqart.com or visit us at tasqart.com. That's TASQART.com. So that's pretty much for today's episode. Don't worry, we'll go back to normal conversations with creators for the last two. I just thought now that we've done the 50 conversations and we had the bonus episode to keep the weekly schedule, this would be a nice reflection of. I feel like Troy McClure in that episode of The Simpsons, so it's come to this clip show. And I was tempted to do a clip show actually of splicing everything up, but I just couldn't bring myself to go through each episode. I'll leave you with this. Blunders and mistakes on my part. Yes, unfortunately, I have made mistakes along the way. In episode 8, where I give my overview of the comic book industry and also mainly just like the approach to sequential art storytelling and how to use all of this in business and marketing and such. I think I muddled up John Bourne's origin. So John Bourne was born in England. His family moved to Canada, and then later on he found his way in America as well. So I think I had him as Canada gone to UK or whatever I did, but my apologies. And with 16.1, where Elliot Maggin, I accidentally referred to the release date of Superman 2 as 1981 when it was 1980. So let me set the record straight here, folks. And my apologies, and if you spot any other mistakes, do write back to me and you will get no prize, as they say. But thanks again, everyone. I'm looking forward to continuing on into the new year. Again, if there's anything that might be of interest to you with TASQ, do get in touch. We are just prepping our next round of character design with Estrella Lorenko, who is a comic book artist, writer, storybook, children's author as well, and of course animator. She recently concluded a 3-part workshop here in person at the TASQ studio, and she'll be delivering her next one online, so we'll be sharing that soon. That might be something for you to network and get to know like-minded individuals along the way. So all the best ahead for 2026. Thank you, and until next time, this has been a copyright production of McAuley Consultancy 2026.